Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families.
And I'm Merrill Hutchinson, President of Rock Solid Families. And we are excited to have you join us as we talk all things faith, family, and fitness. A special thanks to Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency for their support of Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community one family at a time. Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. Hey, Miss Linda, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hey, this is Merrill and Linda Hutchinson with Rock Solid Families, and we are doing our Rock Solid Radio podcast today.
Yeah.
This is going to be a great show today.
Well, they're all good, right?
I know, but this one hits home to really both of us.
Right. Well, that's because we're talking about teaching today, and so specifically talking about the job of the teacher, and we've got quite a bit of experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, my 32 years, and you taught for 10 years?
8 technically.
8 years.
In this classroom, and then 20 years in ministry, which did a lot of teaching.
You were in the classroom all the time with that,
absolutely.
too. So both of us always considered ourselves to be teachers at heart.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we just gravitated in towards more of the counseling and helping profession along with it. In coaching,
right.
We both were coaches and so on. But we're going to have some conversation today about maybe I'll say the state of affairs with some things in education. And this is not meant to be polarizing or politicizing in any way. No. It's really, I think we want to take a more proactive role today in our show, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But, what can we do?
Right?
What can we do to help make the teaching environment, the community a better place? And so we're going to take it from a little bit different approach today. But adding our own personal input in terms of what we've experienced. Yeah.
And where the show came from, we're going to talk about a little bit later. But, there's a lot of teachers out there that are going to be listening that we really just want to encourage and support in any way we can.
Yeah.
And so this is one active way that we believe that we can make a difference. And so we're hoping to do that today.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to say thank you to our sponsors. We want to thank Maxwell Construction. Maxwell Construction was founded in 1988 by John Maxwell. Since that time, Maxwell Construction has grown and expanded to become among the most recognized commercial construction companies in the tri-state area. What separates Maxwell Construction apart from their competition is their emphasis on being service-oriented to help meet the individual needs of their customers. So whether it's a school, a hospital, a restaurant, an apartment, or even a retail center, call Maxwell Construction today at 812-537-2200.
We also want to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency. They have a reputation and business built on caring, listening, and protecting their customers. Mansfield Insurance Agency was built in 1981 and has been dedicated to the individuals and businesses of Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So if you have an insurance need, call Mansfield Insurance Agency at 1-800-230-3927.
All right, that's good stuff. So we want to thank our sponsors. We also want to take a little bit of time to talk about our sponsorship drive, our fundraising drive that we have as we are into the quickly approaching December.
Right, close the gap.
And so we are closing the gap. And so we stated that we had a gap that we needed to close. Not that we're closing our doors if we don't reach it, but we're trying to shore things up and become solid in terms of our financing, so we don't really wonder, how the future is going to go. And so we have had some great donations coming in, and we want to continue to ask for your help, your support. We were just talking today with some folks that, a gentleman who runs a very large company, and a lot of his employees can't afford to get coaching and counseling for their families. And so you and I make it a point to say, well, don't let that stop them. Get them in here. But in saying that, obviously, we still are seeking out some support for that financial donation and that type of thing. So
Right.
We just want to continue to be able to offer things in that way.
Sure, and it's been our first year. Our office has been open exactly a little over a year, and so precisely kind of. But in that, we gained traction, and the word got out, and so it took a little while, and so we know that next year, 2020, is going to be a really strong year, but we do want to close the gap and make it financially strong in 2019.
Yeah. All right, and so we want to continue to remind you guys that we're doing our finishing classes, which we call it finishing. Other people would call it exercise. And so our classes continue to run, and they're looking pretty strong, especially I think the cooler weather has come in, and people are wanting to just do something to move their body. Those are Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 a.m., and Tuesday, Thursday at 6 p.m., and Saturday at 9 a.m. So... And we haven't given our address in a while, but it's 7484 Christina Drive.
Very good.
West Harrison. What, do you think I did not know that?
Well,
West Harrison, Indiana, 47060. So come on out. First class is always free.
Right.
So you can come on out and see what finishing is all about and just how we move and groove over here.
Yeah, and we do generate revenue for the ministry through those classes, as well as our coaching fees for those that are able to pay. So those are part of the ways our revenue generating that we have. Hun, speaking of classes, how about talking about a little bit about your next Strong Dads class?
Well, I know it might seem a little premature, but we're going to start to prime the pump early. So my Strong Dads class is an 8-week class, and we are going to launch our next round January 11th, so that's a Saturday morning at 7:30. The class goes from 7:30 to 9. Yeah, and that's why I kind of wanted to launch it, because all of a sudden holidays are coming, and it's just like, oh my gosh, it's on top of us. So, ladies, grab your man and sign him up, or let him know that this is coming. And if you don't need a lady to do that, then gentlemen, get your tail over this way. January 11th, it'll go 8 weeks. We do a 45-minute workout along with 45-minute study on how to be a strong dad. Yeah. So love that program, love that class, and we're building a lot of stuff off of that, from our Strong Dads podcast to a lot of other stuff that we write is based on being a strong dad.
Yeah, and we've recently had some other organizations that are seeking you out to go and to take that Strong Dad material into their organization. So good stuff. So, Hun, let's get to this topic. So I want to share a little bit what really prompted me in wanting to speak in our podcast about this. Recently had lunch with an old student of mine who I've known since she's been 4, and now she's in her early 20s, and she is a full-time teacher, and she's teaching high school. And so we did lunch recently, and, it was really just sad, the overwhelming feeling that she's having and the despair she was feeling just of what is coming in her classroom all the time, and what her students are dealing with, and what their homes are like. And she is in a little bit of a difficult area of school district, but that is really little microcosm of what so many teachers are feeling, this overwhelmed need to help their students who are coming in with a lot more emotional issues, a lot more social economic issues than they ever have before, whether in times that you and I were teaching, I believe.
Yeah, well, and when you bring that up, I think a lot of people don't understand that most teachers go into the profession because it's heart-driven. Mm-hmm. If you're going in, maybe if you're going to teach maybe at the university level or something like that, it might be because you just really know your stuff. Yeah. You're an expert. And not that our high school and middle school and elementary people don't know their stuff, but that's not their typical motivator.
And it's not to get rich.
No, it's not that. We found that out.
Yeah.
Their motivator is the heart connection. Like, man, I just want to reach into the lives of kids and people. So when you're talking about the student that you were just referencing, her heart right now is what let her in, and now her heart's kind of getting trampled on and beat on. And again, I mean, some of that's natural. She's going to have to go through that a little bit, and she's going to have to learn some boundaries, which we talk about, and like, okay, certain things, just...
You can't own all that stuff.
Yeah, it's out of your control, and every teacher learns that, and they learn to get kind of some healthy distance. But one of there's not one, there's a couple of major things
that I've seen happening in education here, really, to be honest with you, probably the evolution of it at least 15 years, has probably been longer, but about 10 years ago, it really started to come to my mind, like I could put words and thoughts to what is different. And one of the things that I'd like to point out is, there are different stakeholders in the schools. There are administrators, there are parents, there are students, there are teachers, there are taxpayers. These are all just different stakeholders. But the school is a hub. It's where everybody comes together, and especially out in more of our rural communities,
right.
It is the center of the community.
Yeah, there's not really a town.
Right, or maybe we don't have a lot of business or anything,
right.
And so our town or our community is based off of the gem or the not-so-gemmy school. And so we used to get some of these stakeholders, and maybe they'd be pitted against each other, whether it was a teacher salary negotiation or whether the kids, there was an issue. But something that has really come to me in about the last 5 years or so is all of these stakeholders are starting to kind of have the same concern. So not pitted against each other, but to say, whether I'm a superintendent or whether I'm a teacher or whether I'm a parent, we're going, what is going on with education right now? Something doesn't seem right. And that we want to address that a little bit. And again, not in a finger pointing way, because at the end of the day, we have what we have and we have to deal with it.
Right.
So how are we going to deal with it?
Right.
So anyway, that's kind of what led a little bit to us saying, let's point to a different resolution rather than a finger pointing.
Right. And what you and I have seen too, different than when we started teaching 30 plus years ago, is that the expectations of what the teachers are doing in their classroom has greatly changed. We have some teachers who are now the disciplinarians. They're teaching their children in their classroom discipline. They're teaching them manners. They're teaching them character. They're feeding them. They're clothing them. They're expected to figure out how they're going to get Christmas presents. I mean, it's crazy the burden that these teachers are feeling on their responsibility for their kids and their kiddos in their classroom.
Yeah. The other challenge that happens, and again, it's the nature of the beast, and so we're not going to act like it doesn't exist, because it does. And we're primarily talking about public school here.
Right.
And so it's a taxpayer funded system. And so that means that every taxpayer, including us, wants to make sure that our money is going to something of quality. And so often, I used to hate every election cycle. Well, it didn't matter what party was in charge. I hated the election cycle, especially if we knew the party was going to change. Because it doesn't matter the party, everybody wants to put their new stamp onto education, because it's one of the largest places where money goes to. And so all of a sudden we're changing the names of things, we're changing the expectations, we're changing evaluation systems. And it's so often it's just the same animal with a different picture on it, but a lot more different, hoops to jump through. And honestly, if you're working in the system, it's very confusing and frustrating.
Oh yeah, and the standards, the expectations, the check boxes that they have to do, the expectations are so overwhelming, and it has changed, and it seems to change every other year. And so you think you're doing it one way, and you set your lessons in classroom up one way, and then all of a sudden, like you said, politics change, and now you're supposed to do it the exact opposite. Plus, not to mention the whole idea of school safety. And now we're teaching our kids how to get under desks, how to throw things, how to barricade their doors. That is just something that is just so foreign to us as educators that we even had to worry about.
And wait, and you want me to teach your kid how to read.
Exactly.
And again, we're being silly on that, but we're not. I mean, that's what it comes down to so often, that the teacher says, okay, now you've just given me all these things that I have to do, and I also have to teach. And one of the things also that I've noticed that happened really in the last 10 years or so is primarily schools used to be looked at as the place where education was going to take place. And now, because it is a large place that money is dumped into by our tax dollars, and when other systems break down, the school is a place that we can go to say, well, how about if they do it? And so we see now our schools, in many cases, acting like detention centers. We see a lot of police officers, even in the elementary school level, for safety, but also for behavior concerns. We see, you and I, we've joked before, we didn't hardly really know what a school nurse was. Well, we practically see little clinics at all of our schools now. We see the psychiatric part of things, where at one time, if a child was struggling with mental health issues, they would work through the whole psychiatry system through hospitals and so on. And now that's not easily available. And so schools are expected to do that. So now we have, detention center type stuff. We have psychiatric type stuff. We have general supports of medicine. I mean, the number of kids that are on medicine.
Not to mention, we're expected to feed them too. The free and reduced lunch. Those kids are coming in and they're getting a free breakfast, free lunch. And so there's a real concern about what happens when they're off for holidays. What happens when they're off for the summer? How are these children getting fed? And that's so sad to think that it's the school's responsibility. And that's why we have the backpack clubs and the kids getting food to take home over the weekend. And so hon, there's a study from Houghton Mifflin, which is a major school book company, and they were doing a lot of research with teachers. And I love this. I don't love it, but this is the reality. One of the teachers that was in the study said each year the students seem to have greater emotional needs that have an impact on the class as a whole without enough support for the teacher. These situations can be so overwhelming for teachers that it makes academic instruction almost secondary as a daily focus. And that's what we're here to talk about is how can we come alongside teachers? How can we help teachers do their job and take maybe some of this pressure and this load off and these expectations that really were not that's not in their job description. That's not what they were trained for. So let's talk a little bit about how we can help teachers and do that better.
And so let's go into, as you said, how we can help. So one of the very first things that any teacher would want to see is, if it were possible, every kid that walks in their building is healthy and from a healthy environment.
Right. Yeah.
So the very first thing we have to do, and this goes right back to the home environment. The very first thing we have to do is we have to make sure the product that you're sending, which is our child, is the best that they can be.
And you're not just talking about physical health. You're talking about emotional health. You're talking about relational health. Yeah. And
so taking care of your family, mom and dad, you're out there listening, this is the most important first priority that we have to do if we're going to have a chance in our schools. That's why you and I do what we do at Rock Solid Families. We are trying to restore and prioritize the health of families. And then we can start talking about healthy kids, and we can talk about discipline, and we can talk about behavior. I did a whole show once on with Jason Boyd and Angie Boyd and their son, and he was a tough kid. And that whole show was about the idea of we were able to see their child grow into an awesome young man because mom and dad were solid. And they brought to school every day, we're ready to go.
We talked about this before all the time. Stronger families build stronger schools. A teacher, the child's not going to be ready to learn if they are hungry or if they're sleep deprived or if as one of the teachers was recently talking about how her students have just gotten pulled out by DCS and put in foster care. Their dad just overdosed. Their mom just went to jail. Like, how do you learn when you're not even knowing where you're going to sleep tonight?
Right. So, and again, some educators might not like for me to say this, but this is not about throwing more money at the schools. I mean, yes, we need more resources always, right? But the bottom line
I think our teachers' pay is very low too.
Well, that's a whole different discussion. We're talking first about the idea that we have to solidify strong families. Because no matter what neighborhood you're in, if you have a broken down family system, the school cannot carry the entire burden and responsibility of making the kids not just educated, but healthy and out of jail and everything else.
Yeah. So a second thing that you can do as a parent is to treat your school and your teachers with respect as the authorities that they are. Instead of undermining them, instead of bad-mouthing them, instead of questioning everything, it is so, so important, Mom and Dad, that you treat the school and the teachers and the administrators with respect as authorities in your child's life.
Yeah, this is so big because Mom and Dad, please hear us. You are your kid's hero. Mm-hmm. And whatever comes out of your mouth, especially with an elementary school age or younger, whatever comes out of your mouth regarding just about any topic is what your kid thinks is gospel. Mm-hmm. And so if you are one that badmouths the school or the teacher or a policy, guess what? You just set the stage for your child to have that same bias and probably going to act negatively on it. And yet you might not like the school, but you don't have to go there every day. Your poor kid does.
Well, and we've talked about this before. This translates in a lot of things. The coaches, the referees, the employers. We talked about how referees, that you can't get youth referees anymore.
Yeah.
It's such a crisis shortage because they don't want to deal with that. The parents' backlash. Again, I'm not saying that a referee or a coach or a teacher never makes a mistake, but I'm saying you go to that teacher or that coach privately, you have a conversation respectfully, and you don't show your child that there's this dissension between you two, because it creates such mistrust and it creates such a level of confusion for your kids and really this instability for them that is just so unhealthy.
Yeah. And so you said this, but I want to reiterate it. The reinforcement of who the authority is when the child is at school.
Right.
Parents, make no mistake about it. You are the authority of your child when they're under your direct care. But you have to relinquish that to some degree when your child walks into the school.
Right.
Because your child needs to know, hey, if Mrs. Smith said I have to do this, then I have to abide by that. Otherwise, we have this little crazy anarchy that starts to develop, and we wonder why kids are just running the roost and things are out of control. So please, reinforce that, because for the big picture, it works better for everyone.
Right.
We can get to education at that point.
Right. Yeah, and that goes along with grading. That goes along with discipline and school policy. You might not like everything that the school's doing and not doing, but please, please do not openly dispute or argue with it in every little breath. Yep. Your child is not benefiting from that. You may say you're their hero and their coach, but it's just not a healthy thing.
Yeah, I mean, so in real world, if there's a law that I don't like, there is a vehicle, a process for us to change those laws. Yes, it takes work. It can be cumbersome, but that's the way laws should be. We shouldn't be able to change them at the snap of a finger.
Right.
That would be dangerous. The same thing at school. If there is, in which I worked in schools, there's policies that I'm like, really? Why is this a policy? But we want to advocate that go through the proper means to get that taken care of and to see if there's a possibility there.
And this is really important, I believe, is the whole social media shaming, blaming, attacking, bad-mouthing. It is just so unhealthy. It's unhealthy for your whole community. It's unhealthy for your family. It's poor teachers and administrators. Throwing them under the bus publicly is just so belittling, so disrespectful, and it is not becoming of you as a parent. This is not helping your child. Let's do this respectfully. Let's do it privately, confidentially. Yes, you are really going to do a lot of damage, and if that's your goal,
Well, but you do damage to the entire community, which is you're trying to change a single policy or a single circumstance at the expense of the whole community. Now everybody, we've worked with schools in these situations, and now the whole air in the school, is a big black eye.
Before you know, it's on the local news.
Yeah, and so you just did not serve anybody well, and I want to just point out, you're not serving your child well.
No.
You're hurting your child's education and every child that follows. So, if there are issues, take it through the proper course of action, and definitely take it. I mean, I sat in many meetings with parents that had a concern or an issue, and we had listen, those meetings are not always pleasant, but there's there's a vehicle to do that.
But you know what? I've been on both sides as a parent and as a educator, and I so appreciated people who handled their disagreements, their things that they did not agree with in a respectful way and handle it in a proper way. I was so much more willing to listen to them and to take their opinions in consideration than those who are bashing it on social media.
So that's a big ask right there for us. Also, the simple things that we say are simple, but really they become more distant in a lot of people's minds. Just being involved in your kids' education. And let me state that too, because when I was writing that whole idea, I was like, you need to be involved and talking to the teachers.
But we don't help.
Not micromanaging.
Right.
Okay. And our kids have this system called Power School. And I've come to like Power School, but I also know Power School is dangerous because I can instantly in real time
see every grade,
sit there and look at everything my kid's doing. And it's like, you know what? I'm either questioning my kids too much now or I'm wondering how the teacher's doing this or that. And so it's a little bit too much micro. Back off, take a deep breath.
Right.
We've got to trust our kids. We have to trust our teachers.
Right.
And be involved. How about attending the parent-teacher conferences?
Right.
How about attending the festivals? How about greeting people? How about just let people know in that building that you want this building to succeed.
Or volunteer. Maybe you're the room mom. Maybe you volunteer to work with a smaller group in the classroom and read. We've got some folks that do that, and what a blessing that is. Keeps your face in front, and also that teacher's more likely to come to you about little things and work through little things with you on a daily, weekly basis instead of not knowing your name, not knowing your face. We work with families all the time that are having issues with their child in school. And one of the first things I say is you contact every teacher and you let them know that you guys support them and that you want to work together. That just opens the line of communication and says, we're here if you have any issues. We're working with Johnny at home, but if you see anything, please feel free to let us know. We support you.
Yeah, that's really good stuff there. Yeah. So the next area that I really feel like oftentimes goes ill-advised or there's a level of ignorance, and all of us have this when we're on the outside of an organization. But to know actually what resources are available and are not available. A lot of times people think, well, why does the football team get this and the band doesn't get this? Or why does my kid not get an aid and this kid does get an aid? And because we've talked about before, this is a taxpayer-funded system. And from afar, it looks like, well, there's a lot of money in there. They ought to have money to do this. And what we have found is if you are seeing a resource not being provided, do your homework in understanding what resources are actually available and how those are distributed. Because it's not always as easy. I mean, I work directly with special education, which is a very resource-heavy area. And everybody, and again, every teacher, we always wanted more resources.
Sure.
But we know that it's just not practical. And so understanding this school building already has this much of this resource being used. How much more can they get?
Yeah. And
so understanding that also allows you to understand your approach to the solution.
And that reminds me, you were talking about taxpayer dollars. We are mostly talking about public schools, but I came from the private school sector. I had 12 years of private education. And so those teachers a lot of times are even more under-resourced as far as financially getting more things and resources, and their pay is usually less. You were making a lot more money in your first couple years than I was.
Big
you
money.
were big bucks. But what I want to make sure is, as a parent, that you don't come in with the approach of, I'm paying tuition, so I get to call the shots.
Right.
That I get to have an extra say in what goes on. And that's really a dangerous attitude and approach to take.
Well, that's very much in the entitlement attitude.
Exactly.
We talk about that. That's the last
so.
thing that is going to benefit your school or your kids.
Right. Yeah, the kids need to know that the authority is still in the administration and the teachers, not you as the tuition-paying adult. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and so the last piece, and we kind of touched on it a little bit before, is look at your school as the hub, the central part. and because it has the most valuable resource
our kids,
that any community has. It's more valuable than the power plant down the street, more valuable than the automotive plant down the street. It contains the natural resource of our children.
Yeah, and the future of our country.
Yeah, as our buddy would say, future leaders, Mr. Frank would say, all the future leaders are in that building. And so when you look at it that way, you start to take care of it.
Yeah.
You want it to succeed.
Right.
And we really encourage you, do what you can to positively promote and build that school, because it is a direct reflection on your community.
Yeah, I mean, just encouraging your teachers makes a world of difference, hon. We were talking last week was Red for Ed Day, and a lot of the teachers were up in Indianapolis. And so on our way to school, we were talking with our kids just about what that was about, and the fact that our teachers are just so important in our community, but yet they're so underpaid. They're sometimes so underappreciated. And so I was just talking about that, and our littlest one went in and told one of his teachers, thank you for all you do. I really appreciate it. And he went over and he gave her a hug, and she messaged me and said, it melted my heart. You know, just little things.
He probably is expecting an A now.
Yeah, I know. But 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, therefore encourage one another and build each other up just in the fact you are doing. It is so important to encourage our teachers and our administrators, because let's face it, you may say they get the summer off, but the amount of hours they put in those 180, 185 days is incredible, and they do spend so much of their summer just preparing for the next year. So it is so important that we encourage our teachers. Tell your kids to tell your teachers thank you, to write them a note, as you as a parent, to let them know how much you appreciate them.
Yeah. We have a couple of different challenges, and one of those is you just kind of mentioned. I just want to take this out of what you just mentioned and really get our parents to be very active in this. This week, after you hear this show, have your kid go thank their teacher.
Yeah, even write them a note.
Yeah, have them go thank your teacher. That will just do. Remember, we talked about the original reason why teachers go into the profession. It's not knowledge driven
or getting rich.
It's heart driven. It's heart driven. And so, if you want your child to succeed, have them go and touch the heart of the teacher.
Right.
And when they do that, that teacher's going to go above and beyond to get to that kid.
Right. And connect with them as a parent, you know, letting them know for you that you appreciate what they do, letting them know you do support them and that you are one voice. I mean, that's part of what we want to say today too is, you know, be on the same page. If you're not, then you privately go to that teacher or administrator and you work through those issues in a respectful way, listening to them, and they'll listen to you. But don't come at it with, you know, a club. That's not how you get something done.
Yeah. We just want to close by thanking all of the folks that are in our local school district, the Sunman Dearborn School District that our kids went through and we taught at, and so we're going to give a little plug to those guys. It's a great school corporation. I was just talking to some teachers the other day, and they said, you know, I cannot even believe how awesome my class is, how good my kids are. I have great kids. And there's so much other clutter that messes with the education process, but the kids themselves, by and large, we have great kids in our community, and so we want to thank the parents for that, and we want to thank the teachers who are investing in them. So we also better thank our sponsors and get ready to close this puppy out.
Yeah, for sure. We want to thank Jim Mansfield and his team at Mansfield Insurance Agency. We're so thankful for their support for our community. You know, we also want to thank the crew at Maxwell Construction for their financial support and what they're doing for Rock Solid Radio and the community. You know, hon, as we mentioned at the top of our show, we're also in our Close the Gap campaign, and we would love to have you and your family partner with us as we commit to building more strong and healthy families. So for a list of all our sponsors on today's show, all of our families that are behind us, you can go to rocksolidfamilies.org/rocksolidpartners.
Also, we would like to say that if we can help your families in any way, please reach out to us. You can reach us on our webpage, as you just mentioned, rocksolidfamilies.org, or give us a direct phone call at 812-576-7625. That's rock. And so give us a phone call. We'd like to see what we can do to help you out. So for Linda and I, we want to thank you for listening to Rock Solid Radio. If you like what you hear, please share it and move it through the podcast format of whether it's iHeartRadio or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So move that out there, and anytime you can give us a review, we would appreciate any review that you could give us. So get out there and make it a great day.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. For help or more information about what you've heard on today's show, contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-ROCK. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency. If you have questions you'd like answered on our show, or you want to chime in on something you heard, go to our Facebook page, Rock Solid Families. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and for my husband Merrill and I, thanks for tuning in to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time.